Okay, they're all coming in. Everybody's coming in.
They're all coming in.
They're all coming. There we go. And then we have the
Hey.
people.
Welcome. The presentation's over. Just kidding. You're just in time. That's all I know. I think this all happened because we were waiting for you.
Yeah.
You know how the universe unfolds.
No, we just have been at time, but I think we're all good. I got the chat up. I got everybody admitted in. You're recording, so I think we're good.
You tell me when.
When?
When? Wow. Okay. So thanks everybody for coming. My name is Doyle Smith. I'm the executive director for Dual Diagnosis Anonymous of Oregon, which I'll say a little bit more about in a minute. We had some technical difficulties, and I appreciate the patience and I appreciate the effort of MHAO coming in here and trying their best, because I know it's not easy. I want to welcome everybody online, since this is a hybrid, those that are coming from all over the United States. In our DDA online meetings, this is a little tidbit ahead of time, but we have over 1,400 people attending those groups per month, from England, from Switzerland, from Thailand, from St. Petersburg, Russia. So this is kind of cool to have it part of a presentation. So this is called Dual Diagnosis Anonymous, a missing link in long-term support and recovery, which is presented by yours truly. Oh, it didn't do it. Okay, let's see. Okay, so see, the reason why I say that is, see, things have to happen. Okay, so I'm the executive director. I have over 25 years of professional experience with addiction and mental health counseling and delivery since. Oh, and by the way, I'm gonna make sure everybody turns off the phone. One of my diagnoses is ADD, and I haven't got to that part yet, but it will become very apparent in a minute if all the phones go off, just like now. So I have over 25 years of professional experience with addiction and mental health counseling and the delivery system. 14 years of those have been spent with counseling and transitioning, managing, and developing programs in the Oregon State prison system, Columbia River Correction Facility, Santiam, and Coffee Creek, primarily. In 2011, I was hired as assistant director as Dual Diagnosis Anonymous of Oregon. And since 2014, I've been the executive director for the last 8 years. I've been on lots of boards throughout the state. One of them has been MHAO, by the way. Corbett Monica was the president of MHAO at the time first Peerpocalypse happened, which we'll be talking about in a second. Most importantly, I'm a man in long-term recovery from addiction, as well as severe and persistent mental health challenges. And I'm loud and proud to be a man in long-term recovery and a member of DDA. And I say that purposely because I'm not my mental illness and I'm not my addiction, just like a lot of people here on it. It's what's happened to me or what's happening to me. Considering how we had to deal with certain things today, I think we handled our mental health issues very well. And so the story behind Dual Diagnosis Anonymous is what we're going to start with. And then we're going to go into what is DDA, which there is not enough time, just so you know, an hour and a half, well, less than that now, is really unfortunate. But my hope is that you'll grasp, for those that don't know DDA or Dual Diagnosis Anonymous, which is considered DDA, or people online that have never heard of us, will have a very good concept of the dynamics, what makes DDA and what's made DDA so successful over time, why it's called the missing link, why state and county, local, and healthcare agencies invest in our modified 12 Steps Plus 5 fellowship program, and hopefully we'll get the panel testimonies. And there will be a 6:30 to 7:30 DDA meeting if you really want to get the nuts and bolts
and no pun intended, for what a DDA meeting is really like. And I'll be celebrating 29 years. Thank you. So why am I here? That's a very good question. Why are you here? Well, probably for the same reasons in a lot of cases. Mainly because addiction and mental health illnesses run rampant as a generational family disease. My mother, Judy Barrows, and my sister, Dina Smith, both died at the age of 43. As a direct result of their addiction and their mental illness. So I'm here to be a peer who has hope and determination of removing the stigma and the ignorance of mental illness and addictions and honoring my family by helping others. How many people have had some loved ones or anybody they know that are close to them pass away because of their addictions or mental health? So you're my brothers and you're my sisters. So National Institute of Drug Addiction, NIDA, they say that addiction is a chronic, progressive, and fatal disorder. Chronic because it's ongoing, progressive because it gets worse over time, and fatal because it'll kill you. And if it's not arrested, you're going to see a lot of people, like any other illness, die from this stuff. And what's sad about that is there's a lot of hope and a lot of knowledge and a lot of information that can interrupt that. So you can't talk about DDA without talking about how DDA started. And Corbett Monica, the founder of DDA, who was a highly decorated Vietnam veteran, served in the Vietnam War, thought he was doing an honorable duty to his country fighting the communists, and he came back unbeknown to him that the things that were happening here in the United States were against that. And what he came back to was people calling him a baby killer and spitting on him and things of that nature. And he had severe post-traumatic stress disorder and severe attention deficit disorder and severe OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. And how he managed that when he came back was through opiates, mainly heroin and reds and codeine, to the point where he was in and out of hospitals, physically died on 5 occasions, and was finally committed to a psychiatric security hospital where they kept him for 15 months. And at the end of that 15 months, he had spoke about how being in that hospital, the thing that he noticed worked the best was helping other people. And so much so, when he left that hospital in San Bernardino, California, they asked him to come back and work. If that's not pure support, I don't know what is. And this was in the early 90s. Corbett got his bachelor's in psychology, and he went on to work in the mental health and addiction field in California. And he was working for a program called the STEMS program. The STEMS is an acronym for Support Together Emotional Mental Sobriety and Serenity, which was one of the few treatment programs in California that work with severe and persistent mental health clients that also were working with their addictions. And just so you know, a conservative percentage of data on people that are severely diagnosed with mental health issues are also at least 60% of the people with diagnosis have a substance abuse and or addiction diagnosis. And not all addictions are substances. When the most deadly, according to information, the most deadly addiction from suicide is not even a drug, it's gambling. How many people are in recovery from gambling? Just curious, anybody? Yeah, it's a pretty important one. So Corbett, being the person that he was helping. Corbett actually also attended NA, Narcotics Anonymous, and he was very familiar with the fellowship. and how they were dealing with the addiction piece in the early 90s at the STEMS program to help those that had severe and persistent mental health diagnosis was by taking them to 12-step meetings, by the way, and managing their symptoms, because it was a co-occurring disorder. Both of them had to be helped simultaneously. And back then, they didn't have a lot of other information or understanding. And by taking these individuals to and from the 12-step meetings from this program, they watched them get better. And over time, this one particular time, and I just need to make a footnote because this is not a slam on any other of the other 12 steps, AA, NA, CA, whatever A keeps you at DA. It's just that it's part of the history of how this came about. And we know now that most fellowships are very lenient when it comes to certain types of issues that are related to the reasons why they come into these fellowships. But Corbett was taking this group of people, there was 6 of them, to an AA meeting, which they had been going to and benefiting from over time. And the story goes, 2 gentlemen, Ruben and Steve, that were paranoid schizophrenic alcoholics, were very symptomatic, and they were triceted off their medications, and they became disruptive. And so at the end of the meeting, a gentleman came up to Corbett and asked Corbett not to bring Ruben and Steve back. And Corbett felt like he needed to do something about that because they were benefiting. They should get the peer support and the fellowships just like anybody else. So what Corbett did next was contact AA Central Office in New York City and asked them what he should do. And what AA told him to do was well, first they told him they had no opinion on outside matters, hence be caught up in controversy, just like your physicians talk about. But they said that he should start his own meeting. And he said to them, well, if I start my own meeting, it can't be like that because we're being kicked out. And they said, well, we'll give you permission to use the 12 steps of AA with a disclaimer. And they sent him a letter, gave him permission, and he modified those steps in order to help address the mental health piece with addiction, on top of adding 5 steps that were supposed to be specific to the mental health components in terms of how people are duly diagnosed. And that was derived out of a whim, so to speak, at first. Later on, he would say it was a spiritual intervention because of where we're at today. But back then, it was just one person trying to help another. And it was the biggest blessing of his life. So when he started that in Fontana, California, in February of 1996, he carried on for 2 years. And Ruben and Steve attended weekly meetings there to the very end before he left, and were sponsors and what they call practitioners in the fellowship, which is what you'll find out about if you read the book, and have done very well since then. Corbett came to Oregon in 1998 to be a supervisor at the DePaul Treatment Center down in Portland, Oregon, where I was working as a counselor, and he was my supervisor, my boss. And the first DDA of Oregon meeting started here in Portland in 1998 at Paul Treatment Center. I was doing recovery and H&I and doing mental health stuff with local rehab. And I wasn't really involved with DDA because I didn't know that Corbett was doing that when he was here. But I did know him as my supervisor. Corbett only lasted a year there, and then he left. And he moved around like a lot of us do in this line of work. He ended up working for CODA. He ended up working for ASAP. And then he landed a job at Cascadia Behavioral Health Care that was contracting mental health and addictions inside of the prisons. And so Corbett ended up landing a job managing Bridgepoint, which was a mental health treatment program inside Columbia River Correction Institution. I ended up 5 years later also working for Cascadia, landing in Turning Point at Columbia River Correction Institution. So me and Corbett's paths crossed once again. Corbett was trying to get DDA planted here in Oregon, just like he did in California. And it was his little baby because people were responding to it very well, but it wasn't well organized. And he knew he needed to do it but it wasn't well organized. It wasn't until 2005, I'll never forget this. He came to my office, knocked on my door and said, "I'm going to do it, bro. I'm going to do it." And I said, "Do what?" He said, "I'm going to quit my day job." And I said, "What do you mean you're going to quit your day job?" He goes, "I'm going to quit my day job and start my dream. I'm going to start DDA. I just got a grant from Addictions and Mental Health Services to start DDA in the state of Oregon." And I said, "Oh my God, dude, congratulations." And then when he left, he walked out that door, and I really wish I would have went with him. It wasn't until 2011 when an assistant director position came across my email. I jumped on it. But Corbett came back a few times and presented to the clients at Turning Point, and each time Corbett came back, he was illuminated. He was totally changed. That 2-year grant that he got from Addictions and Mental Health Services, which the director at the time was Bob Nichols, which is our board member to this day. Him and his wife, Tina Nichols, gave Corbett $55,000 to establish 20 DDA meetings along the I-5 corridor between the Oregon State Hospital and the Portland, Oregon State Hospital in Portland, Posh and Osh. And the theory was to get the meetings going because he already had them going in the hospital and people were benefiting. But they needed to be able to continue that support and have the traction needed to help sustain the mental health and addiction. So the idea was for him just to get 20 DA meetings along the I-5 corridor because there was PSRB housing, which is psychiatric security review board housing, clean and sober housing, and churches and stuff like that. Well, in 2 years, Corbett didn't get 20 DDA meetings going. He didn't complete that. He doubled it. He got 57. And from that moment, from that moment to now, almost, I hit ahead. Sorry. DDA became a 501c3 nonprofit and got another 5-year grant by Richard Harris, which replaced Bob Nichols, and seeded DDA in the state of Oregon. So DDA receives awards, for a governor appointed award, published articles. I don't know if you can know SAMHSA, Substance Abuse Mental Health Service Administration. DDA was actually highlighted in their Partners for Recovery in their 2012 article as an exceedingly well growth peer support group. And to this day, we keep, it's funny to say that DDA gets awards when the awards is doing the work that we do, right? I mean, it's interesting. So DDA actually goes international. People come from London, they get wind of DDA and they want to start DDA in the UK. DDA grows up to as many as 34 to 36 counties in the state of Oregon, reaching 3,000 to 4,000 people a month. And then in 2014, Corbett retires, and I apply for the executive director position, and I get hired. And then the book, Journey to the 12 Steps Plus 5, gets published, which is DDA's manual. It has a syllabus, and it's like a didactic, but it's also a step study. And they use it in crisis centers and hospitals and DDA groups in order to help teach like a measurable, methodical approach to recovery, almost, you might call it that. Then in October 30th of 2015, Corbett passes away from cancer of the esophagus, which was related to his Vietnam veteran era in terms of Agent Orange. She found out later on. He was 67 years old. Corbett actually had 3 celebrations of life. There went a squirrel. Corbett had 3 celebrations of life. One in Palm Springs. I was honored and I had the pleasure to be able to go all 3. The first one was personal with his family. He was from California and it was in Palm Springs. The second one was at the Oregon State Hospital because he was loved and adored there. and they're such a big presence of DDA. And then the third one was down in downtown Portland, where people came from all over the United States to say their goodbyes to him. But if you're in DDA, you know Corbett's not gone, especially because we're talking about him each and every day. But if you had to think of a saint in real life, and you knew Corbett, you would say he was a saint. So a fun fact, Peerpocalypse first keynote speaker was DDA founder Corbett Monica. Also, the MHAA board's president. And one thing he said that was an extract from that particular presentation, that keynote, and I wrote this down. He talked for 2 hours, but this was a part that I picked out that was really important. It says, when one peer decided to make a difference in the life of another, and you are that tipping point. It's like when enough peers decide to help other peers, this is apocalypse because we are in a new beginning of the value and the importance of us serving one another. There's love here. That is why we're here. We are all here because we know we need to make a difference in other people's lives. And by doing so, it's going to make a difference in our own lives. And there is no other choice. We must continue to do what we are now doing. If we don't, we are not going to continue to heal. And he was very fond of saying this: there is no amount of drugs or alcohol that can make me feel better than I do right here, right now, with all my brothers and sisters. And for this, I will be forever grateful. Corbett Monica, 2013. So what is DDA? Wow, that is a loaded question. There are so many answers to this. I'm going to start with the mission statement, which is our 5th tradition. It says each DDA group has one primary purpose, and that purpose is to carry its message of hope and recovery to those who still suffer from the effects of dual diagnosis. DDA's 5th tradition. And I sat in many meetings with Corbett, who running an organization like DDA has a lot of ups and downs, stressors, and complications, and politics, and policies, and all kinds of things you can think of as a nonprofit. But he would always say to me, as long as DDA's mission comes first and foremost, everything else will come second and will take care of itself. And that hasn't ever not been the case. It's kind of interesting when you live by what you teach. So DDA is a 12-step program springboarded from Alcoholics Anonymous, just like I mentioned, addressing substance abuse and addiction for those that are duly diagnosed, with the permission of AA. And AA actually gave NA and Al-Anon and Al-Anon permission as well to use their steps, to modify them. Addressing substance abuse and addictions is duly diagnosed with the permission of AA. Steps 1, 4, 6, and 12, which, I can't go over all of the literature that we would go over if we were going to do a meeting today. I'm just going to point out some differences. How many, is there anybody that's not familiar with a 12-step meeting here? I don't know online, but here, is there anybody not? Okay, so AA, NA, CA, whatever A keeps you out of DA, including DDA, has 12 steps, okay? And they also have 12 traditions. And it's usually you go to meetings, you read the book, you work with a person that helps you understand the steps, and you give back, pretty much. And if you look at them as a didactic, they're a methodical, measurable approach that has objectives and goals to them. And they're specific to the needs of people that come to those places. Because DDA has the mental health and addictions, the first step is that you're not powerless over alcohol or drugs or gambling. It's your dual diagnosis. And powerlessness doesn't mean that you're not empowered. It just means that you come to an acceptance or an understanding that something is happening to you that you have to do something about. So there's a difference with the first step. The second step, or the 4th step, is obviously an inventory, the dreaded fearless moral inventory, which is where people say in the 12 steps that that's where the tire meets the road in terms of when you reach that step. But it really goes deep into understanding things that are created or were there prior to or after or because of the addictions. Same thing with the mental health. You might feel bad that you're high on anxiety and you explode because you're PTSD and you want to make amends to people. And then you do it again. Well, you think you're not working the steps well enough, when really it's a mental health condition that you have to manage, and that there's a piece to it that you would realize that it doesn't matter how many times you work the steps. It's not about that it will just stop happening. It's about it will be managed or less, or it'll be something that you accept in terms of living at peace with unresolved problems. And it doesn't mean that you're not in recovery. But it really is a little difficult to differentiate the two. So we go over both of them, because you're not excused from the characteristics that are also part of the development. You know, they say if you sober up a horse thief, what do you get? Sober horse thief. Just because you don't drink doesn't mean you don't got criminal thinking, right? And something has to change about that. Oh. Okay, so tell me online if you can hear me when I'm talking into the speaker, or is it the speaker on this? The speaker on your laptop, probably. Is that better? I can't see. I'll just keep going. Okay, so real quick, all right. I hope I'm not yelling too loud. All right. I really can't hear myself either. All right, so the 6th step is differentiating, and the 12 steps is really being of service to others with mental health. And it's pretty simple in terms of the differences. The 5 steps, which we'll get into a little bit, are also that are just applicable, and probably the main reason why people will come to DDA, because there's more to this thing that they're trying to deal with that's not being able to be accessed through other fellowships. And the important piece is the peer support. And why we're called the missing link in a lot of surveys. So DDA includes the 5 additional steps, which primarily focus on the mental health and the mental health conditions and why most people come to DDA. These steps include taking your medications as prescribed, and there's crosstalk, meaning questions and answers are welcome and positive feedback is given when talking, and this is part of the literature. And the reason why that's important is because there's a figuring out thing. It really works well in our groups in terms of understanding, or just the fact that somebody might be you would have social phobia just going into a 12-step meeting initially anyway. And think of that with somebody with an anxiety diagnosis. It's times 1,000. You sweat profusely, your heart patters, you lose your train of thought. Some people even get panic attacks and claustrophobic. But after they settle down and they relax a little bit and they hear things that are familiar, and then they get attuned to what they're listening to, if somebody called on them, they said, no, I can't talk because they're panicky, and then they hear something, they want to say something to it, then they have a chance. And it really works well with that. So our preamble best sums it up. Oh wait, I missed something. So taking medication as prescribed, crosstalks included, and it also includes our extended family. I know you can look at the symbol up there, the 5-petaled flower. It's our 5 steps. The space in the middle is just as important as the steps themselves in our literature. And why that is because it includes the extended family. And the people that are the extended family are the clergy, the prescribers, the counselors, the brothers, the sisters, the wife, the mother, the next door neighbor, the dog, anybody that contributes to the betterment of what you're trying to deal with. You know, and I'm a man, and I love all the 12 steps. I've been through 4 treatment programs, lots of psych wards, hospitals, institutions, you know, you name it. And I know for a fact that it was a combination of everything that helped me, not just one. And we'd be stupid to think that if we didn't include the extended family, especially with the mental health and what's there in terms of what's necessary, then it wouldn't be as successful as it is. So we welcome those that aren't really diagnosed as well. So hopefully this is going to be a very interesting experiment, because this is one of those videos with sound. See? Okay. Not happening.
Right? This one, and you have to click this little box right here. And you do here. And you go here. And then where were we at? Is this right?
Yeah, that's it.
Is this it?
Yeah, that's part of it. It's not. Let me see. It's.
Thank you guys for your patience.
Yeah, it's a little commercial that we put on. I think that helps me help you guys easily here without trying to reinvent the wheel.
Which one were you on, right here?
Yeah, at the beginning. But rock in around the state, which employs service workers, volunteers, and DDA outreach specialists.
As an outreach specialist, I try to model recovery through shared experiences, showing our feelings, our fears, our hopes, and our experiences.
Our peer support model is group focused, how to navigate the system, how to prevent their symptoms, how to recover from their addiction. We've been doing this since 1996, and through focus groups, surveys, and what people are saying, they're coming to our meetings and not going to crisis centers, not going to the hospitals, not being arrested as much. So it has a huge impact on the community. Most people with mental health issues have substance abuse and addiction issues. It's very hard to find places where it addresses both, and in DDA they are able to come there, find a safe place, connect with people with similar experiences, and find the hope that's needed in order to recover.
I can rewind it. I can rewind it. Sorry guys, I'm gonna have to do this. Okay. I hope you can hear it this time. I apologize for those that are online because we can't hear it.
Hi, my name is Doyle Smith. I'm the Executive Director for Dual Diagnosis Anonymous of Oregon.
Hi, and I'm Cassandra Monks, the Outreach Specialist with Dual Diagnosis Anonymous of Oregon.
Dual Diagnosis Anonymous of Oregon is a nonprofit organization that helps people with substance abuse addictions and mental illness. We have groups in Project Able, Rock, and around the state, which employs service workers, volunteers, and DDA outreach specialists.
As an outreach specialist, I try to model recovery through shared experiences, showing our feelings, our fears, our hopes, and our experiences.
Our peer support model is group focused, how to navigate the system, how to prevent their symptoms, how to recover from their addiction. We've been doing this since 1996, and through focus groups, surveys, and what people are saying, they're coming to our meetings and not going to crisis centers, not going to the hospitals, not being arrested as much. So it has a huge impact on the community. Most people with mental health issues have substance abuse and addiction issues. It's very hard to find places where it addresses both, and in DDA they are able to come there, find a safe place, connect with people with similar experiences, and find the hope that's needed in order to recover.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Doyle.
This is gonna haunt me. Okay. All right, so hopefully you can hear me. So fellowship differences, for those that know, and I apologize for the person that raised her hand that says she's not real familiar with 12 steps, but I do want to point out a few differences because there's some assumptions. And sometimes, you know, DDA's had some interesting developments since 1996. But one of the differences is, and rightly so, is the difference that's pretty taboo, and I mean it's even contradictive in a sense when you call something anonymous. And here it's not only anonymous, it's confidential because of mental health. But we actually hold equal esteem for individuals' right to openly identify as a DDAer or to remain anonymous in DDA. DDA acknowledges that the stigma associated with mental illness continues to carry most profound negative perceptions. The ignorance and misunderstanding of mental illness often leads to ostracizing and or discrimination. And thus, many among us have readily forsaken our personal anonymity with the perceived understanding that to do so would be for the greater good. And I'm one of those people. I'm here and I'm a member of DDA and I have no anonymity. And the reason why is because it's necessary. It also shows the contrast of change, and I have to educate the community. But I also would never disclose anybody's information and or their names, or if they haven't given me permission. But it's definitely something that, if you notice, there's a lot of DDA shirts around here that would be seen as breaking anonymity to a certain degree. But we're loud and proud to be men and women in the program. And so there's that piece to it. But we also make mention that in this day and age, it's not really that uncommon to hear. I don't know if you guys watch the news lately, but anybody know who Steven Tyler is of Aerosmith? I mean, he's so loud and proud about Alcoholics Anonymous and being a member. It's not even freaking funny, and it's okay because he's famous. So it's something that is, I guess, why there's steps and traditions, because people need them, right? But in DDA, we regard both equally and respect both equally. If you choose not to be or choose to be. But that being said, you would never break the anonymity or confidentiality of someone else or the information inside the meetings. There are many of our fellowships that hold their anonymity as well as the anonymity of others to the highest regard. In DDA, one's personal choice regarding their personal anonymity is honored with equal emphasis. These decisions regarding anonymity are deeply personal, and we insist that all within our fellowship respect and honor the DDA's choice. Please note a strong word of caution here. If one is not certain beyond a shadow of a doubt whether or not a DDA has given her or his permission to share their personal information outside the meeting, one must never do so. And the only certain way to know that is to personally ask a person regarding it. So that's one of the differences that I like to clarify. Another differences is our extended family, which I just made mention to. The space within each of the petals, like I said, the flower symbolizes our extended family. Our extended family includes all those who, although not identifying as duly diagnosed, support the DDA 12 Steps Plus 5 program of recovery. These persons may include family members, friends, prescriber, clinicians, clergy, and or other DDA acknowledges the profound contributions of the extended family to our recovery efforts. The inclusion of our extended family within the symbol of DDA is a true testimony that these persons are indeed embraced within our fellowship. And what you're going to find out is we do a lot of academics. We had focus groups done. We speak at universities. There's people that do internships with us. And I'm going to share a testimony in a minute, past some more slides, of somebody that did their Capstone Project with us through Pacific University, what they said. The other thing that's important to understand is when I mentioned how DDA started with that grant from AMH that seeded DDA, The strategic plan, the need for DDA's growth has been expanded. And so with that, our traditions reflect that, which would be different than other fellowships. And I just want to point out a few of them. And one of them is 6, DDA exercise extreme caution, and only with DDA's board permission in rare occasions to endorse, finance, or lend the DDA name to be related to a facility or outside enterprise, less problems in money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose, which is all done through a board of directors. And just so you know, everybody that works for DDA is peers, 100%, and the board is 51% mental health and addictions. DDA as such, number 7, DDA as such exercise extreme caution and diligence when accepting outside contributions or other sources of funding, lest we be distracted from our primary purpose. And every local chapter of DDA should also still try to be self-supportive. Now, DDA success is for a lot of reasons, but one of them definitely is the fund. Definitely is the fund, because we hired DDA outreach specialists. Corbett, when he first started in 2005, 2007, hired 2 DDA outreach specialists. And guess what? They're still working for us. They're still working for us. And we have a lot more. And number 8, Dual Diagnosis Anonymous as a whole should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. And I'm not sure why I can't see all that. It doesn't let me scroll this up. Okay, never mind. You guys can read that? This is the most interesting presentations I have yet to do. Okay, it kind of went. It's fine. You guys can read our traditions later. Okay. He is more than a fellowship, definitely. Why? Because it's a 501c3, it hires outreach workers, it facilitates and startups and gives oversight for DDA 12 steps plus 5 support groups. Pre-COVID, we had in Oregon statewide over 150 chapters in 34 of the 36 counties with 3,000 to 4,000 attendants per month. We have 17 online. Now we have 17 online meetings with up to 1,400 people who all over the world attend. We do step studies. We have a 12-step plus 5 workbook facilitation with a syllabus. Everybody know who Janie Marsh is? She's the director, right? Executive director. Okay, she's public about this, so I can say this. She used to work at Esophagus in Yamhill County, and guess what she did? She did the 12-step facilitation manual for DDA before our workbook came out. And she used to bring DDAers from there to our meetings at the fellowship at the Garlington Center in Portland from Yamhill County. Ask her. We do events, fellowships, picnics, bowling, camping, holiday get-togethers, art, dance groups. We know that going to a meeting and learning how to manage your symptoms and not relapse and all that stuff isn't who you are, right? Isn't what we're about. But it's important and it's necessary to do one thing and one thing only, is to have a life. And that life should be expanded from the people you meet. So that's how important these events are. They're not just teaching the community or giving somebody some clean and sober stuff. It's really building that support and creating that purpose that was lost and hopeless before they came here. So we write those up in our contracts. We educate. We've been, and there's a lot of great people here that have talked with me, which hopefully can get a chance to talk at the end. Portland State University, Pacific University. They helped us do our focus groups. You guys know who the leading expert on dual diagnosis in the United States is? His name is Dr. Robert Drake. He works for Dartmouth University. He's a professor, and he's also the director of psychology there. And he did the foreword in our workbook, and he helped us with our focus groups. Why state, county, local, and healthcare agencies invest in our modified 12 steps plus 5 Fellowship program. Well, cause one, I can do this because it saves lives. Okay. It restores families. Good job, Carol. She's trying to keep me on track, guys. Helps the community, reduces crimes, hospitalizations, gives back, educates, provides resources. And I like to say, because of the dynamics of the meeting, and again, I can't go through all the literature, but one of them is the questions and answers are welcome and positive feedback is given when asked for. And you know, I just realized that I didn't read the preamble at the very beginning when I said what best sums it up, because I had that little shiny moment. So I'm going to say it without the preamble in front of me. So I said, what sums up DDA is the preamble. And the preamble goes like this. DDA is a fellowship of persons who share their experience, strength, weaknesses, feelings, fears, and hopes with one another to resolve their dual diagnosis and or learn to live at peace with unresolved problems. The only requirement for membership is a desire to live a healthy drug and alcohol-free lifestyle. That's the only requirement. You don't have to have both diagnoses. You don't even have to say you're diagnosed. And just so you know, that word diagnosis has a negative connotation to it, and we're not our diagnosis. It's what's happening to us. But check it out. If you ever come to one of our meetings because of the name, and guarantee you're going to hear that through the system, is people laugh at that and say, I'm not duly diagnosed. Of it. And I don't think there's a person that's alive that really isn't. Anyway, so it complements services such as treatment programs, crisis centers, clean and sober and PSRB housing, transitional housing, TransAny Hope housing, hospitals, respite centers, jails, you name it. That's where we're all at. It has research and fidelity, impact, and outcome finds, which is on our website. It provides hope and recovery from those with dual diagnosis, which is now considered co-occurring disorders, but we're not changing the name. So DDA is DDA is a successful and value-based organization. Check this out, guys. Wait this out. And it's supported by the following, but not limited to. So right now, and I have no problem being public because we're a nonprofit, so I can be. We have about a $500,000 a year annual budget, okay? And that's because OHA funds us. That's because Oregon State Hospital funds us. That's because Legacy Unity Crisis funds us. That's because Columbia Pacific Coordinated Care Organization funds us. That's because Jackson Care Connect funds us. That's because Gobi used to fund us, and we're trying to get that funding back. That's because Pacific Source funds us. That's because All Care, Cascadia, Cedar Hills, Multnomah County, Washington County, Clackamas County, Yamhill County. Check this out. This is why. We're everywhere. Oh my God. That's not my fault. I didn't make this slide. It's moving right ahead, moving right ahead. It figures that Carolyn would notice that. Carolyn is our administrative service coordinator and our Columbia Pacific Regional Coordinator at the same time, and my right-hand person. Oh my God, how come it's not going forward? There. Okay, here we go. This is interesting. So a Capstone Project in college is a final independent project undertaken in the program of study designed to assess the skills, knowledge, and expertise acquired by the student. As the name suggests, it is a capstone or crowning achievement of academic life in the last class taken before graduation. Anybody here do the capstone? Just curious. Okay. All right, so Sarah, this last year, did a 4-month study on DDA that ended in a program with the fidelity chart. And she is an occupational therapist, graduate from Pacific University. And I asked her to please give me a testimony of what she felt and thought after she went through DDA for 4 months. And if I don't get too choked up reading this, I'm going to read this to you. And this is her words, not mine. So DDA reminds me of the kintsugi, which is a Japanese art of repairing broken pottery by mending the broken pieces with processed gold. DDA takes those of us who feel broken due to the life's experiences, the system, and from dual diagnosis, and fills those fractures with unconditional love, lifetime acceptance, and a place to call home. This provides the opportunity for all of those embraced by DDA to have a second chance in life that had never been thought possible. With the gold in place, we come back more resilient and more beautiful than ever before. Recovery is a lifelong process, and we may break again, but DDA is there, gold powder in hand, and ready to mend those pieces without hesitation or judgment. Once in DDA, always in DDA. And just so you know, there's Corbett doing a presentation in Gobi. There's one of the classes, we go there every year at Pacific University and do a presentation, and we get internships, and this is where she came from. Of course, there's me doing it after Corbett passed. And there's our team. One of our pictures of our team. We've ebbed and flowed since then. So, I do not know how this is going to work because this is just kind of, well, on my screen, different. See if this works. Oh my goodness, go back. Okay, oh my goodness, this is not. Yeah, it's not working. So if I go here, that's my website. And I was hoping to be on my website to show a couple things off the website, like the board and the team, but that's fine if we can't. We're kind of running out of time anyway. Any questions now? That's fine. So we'll just pass it up. DDAinc.org was what I was going to go on and just click on a couple things, and you can read about this. You can see the testimonies. You can see the meeting schedules. You can click on the links. There's a lot of great information. I mentioned earlier that when COVID hit in March of 2020, we went online, and we had hit a milestone in April of 2020 on our website. We hit the 200,000 visitor mark. Since 2020 to April of 2022, almost 90,000 people have visited our website because of, and I'm guessing because of COVID and how bad mental health. Now, welcome to our world, right? I mean, you watch mental health online or on the news all the time. And Bob Nichols, the board vice president, said he thinks that people that come to groups in 12 steps like DDA are not the broken ones, are not the crazy ones. It's us trying to figure out how to fit in a crazy world, which is pretty evident today, right? This was just another shot of showing the expansion of DDA. DDA UK has done focus groups too. They have presented in Italy after providing presentations for us with the help. If you notice, I don't know if anybody knows Brandy Hemsley. She's the director, or she's actually visiting in the left-hand corner up above with the director and the assistant director of the UK DDA. If you look down at the right-hand corner, Ali Linfoot, which works for Clackamas County, is also in Europe, in London, at our UK DDA, which is pretty cool, I think. And then Corbett's over in the bottom left-hand side, where Daniel Ware, which is when he first came from London to America, to look up how we were dealing with mental health and addictions as a grant to take back over there for their services, fell in love with DDA. And it took him 6 years to help get that back together. So with that, we're just going to open it up. I think I really know you.
I really like it.
Okay, I'm sorry for those that online might not have seen what I was just talking about. They didn't see me. Okay, well, that's important. Okay, that's good. That's good to know. Okay, so the last part really, you know, we have bowling events, we have picnics, we have all kinds of stuff. But we're running out of time, and I wanted to make sure that we had time for questions. And we have a couple of people here that I was hoping they work for DDA. They're outreach specialists. They have a heck of a story. They're beautiful souls. This what makes DDA is the people, places, and things. It's not just one thing. It takes a village. It really does. And I want to thank everybody for coming here, but I don't know what questions you might have. Anybody? Go ahead, way back there. Can I ask you your name? Fletcher. Okay, Fletcher. Great question. The Psychiatric Security Review Board is basically parole and probation for those that are criminally insane, those that come out of hospitals that have guidance and supervision needed. And usually you're coming out of the Oregon State Hospital and you're placed in housing, and they call it Psychiatric Security Review Board housing, PSRB housing, because they have, some of them are locked down. Some of them are in places like telecare. Some of them are ran by Cascadia Behavioral Health Care. There's forensic PSRB treatment programs. But where they're needed is support, like any place else. Are they easy to work with? Well, we had one guy that came out of the hospital, did really well, was still in the PSRB housing. We had to run his criminal background check because that's part of this job. And they violated him because he got a hit for having police contact when all it was a criminal background check. And we assured them that's what it was, and they didn't care. So are they hard to work with? Sometimes. So much, yeah. Well, being in DDA actually gives you a leg up in PSRB supervision, just so you know, because we actually had the director of PSRB on our board, Mary Claire Buckley, for a long, long time before she stepped down. Yeah, it's part of the mental health system, and it has its pros and cons, just like anything else. What's that? Yeah. No, it's not. One of the reasons why to manage our symptoms and stay in recovery. Yeah, there's so many things. I mean, I don't want to end this on a note of the system flaws, but there definitely are a lot in the reasons why we need more support. And you'll hear those topics and those issues. And those are good points because of what people have to deal with and what resources or what ways to manage that using the DDA literature and or the support or other things that are gathered and understood. So it's not just a 12-step program, so to speak. You get to learn a lot, get to hear a lot. Yes, sir. Yeah, they're still happening. We even had people want to start meetings as we're here, virtual recovery, virtual point here in Astoria. Wants to start a DDA meeting. We have some in Helping Hands. We have some here in Seaside. Okay. They're not gonna remember. Okay. So, but here's the deal. Here's the deal with that. We're at the, because we're located all the time, we're in churches, we're in Lano clubs, but we're mainly in a lot of places that people are at, like crisis centers and hospitals and treatment programs, jails and clean sober housing. And so COVID really, only a few of them allowed us to stay. We're all vaccinated and everything, but we're at the whim of letting like Coda and Folk Time and whoever else, that had a really good presence of us in it. Even the Oregon State Hospital didn't let us come back. So it's a hurry up and wait. We're hoping that this year is the year, right? This year is the year. That's my. Thank you for asking that question. So Corbett was a Vietnam vet, and it was built because of his Vietnam vetness, right? The whole PTSD stuff. So it's a huge piece of what DDA is. And we definitely have, there's a section on our website that talks about the veterans piece. And we have a veteran DDA outreach specialists. We have online DDA veteran meeting. We're trying to reinforce and build on that. We have a lot of different veterans that want to be part of this, but here's the deal about veterans. I don't know, anybody here a vet? Just curious. No? All right, well, just like any other diversity, diverse type thing, either gender or women, man, color, creed, what? Veterans are an interesting dynamic in terms of you have to hold your mud. You cannot be weak. If you go online, Big Brother's watching. There's a lot of barriers to keeping DDA veteran meetings, specifically for DDA veterans, going, just so you know. We do it, and I wish we could do it better. So we're always asking for help for that. I think anybody who served. Any other questions? Online? Man, I did a great job. I answered everything. All right. So, Therese, we have 10 minutes.
Well, Smith, everyone, isn't he incredible? Congratulations. Looking forward to celebrating you this evening. My name is Therese. I'm dually diagnosed. My diagnoses include severe panic and anxiety disorder. So as you can imagine, this is unnerving. And I also have ADHD, so that rain looks really cool out there too. So I don't quite know how this is going to end up, but I do want to talk about a little something. My lived experience, and I won't go on too long. I probably picked up. I drank the first time when I was about 4 years old, and probably by the time I was like a teenager, I was the try anything kind of girl. Like, okay, yeah, sure, people are smoking in the parking lot. Let's go smoke cigarettes. Oh, you're gonna go smoke some weed behind the bleachers. Let's do that too. Okay, I was just kind of like that person, and I very quickly became what they called chemically dependent. And I went into treatment centers, and I would come back out and I would relapse. I'd go into another treatment center and I'd come back out and I'd relapse. And I could just never quite get a footing on recovery. I could put stack together maybe 11 months. One time I stacked together 2 years, but I always kind of slipped right back out the door. And the thing for me was that I never really got to the root of it. I always knew that the using and the drinking was a symptom of something else. Like, I always knew that wasn't the problem for me. I always knew the issue was much deeper. I went through, probably 5 or 6 arrest cycles before I got pregnant with my first daughter. And I managed to get together 12 years after she was born before the wheels fell off again. And when the wheels fell off when she was 12, they really came off. Like, that was I was all go, no stop. What they say about your disease is out there doing push-ups while you're sitting in meetings is absolutely true. Like it was out there. And I did so much damage to my children probably within probably a 3-month period of time that I feel like they could have been raised by my addiction the entire time and still probably been the same place that they were in. It was really a pretty bad place for us. And DHS stepped in, and I went to jail a few times. And I would get out, and I got the kids back from DHS, and then I lost them again to DHS. And it was just this ongoing just cycle of crazy because I was never getting to the root of what was happening. And finally, when I was, the last time that I went through, I went into the restitution center in Washington County. And I went to a DDA meeting, and I'd been to one before. I've been to a few before in the restitution center. But for some reason, I just really started watching the person that was facilitating that meeting, and I felt like I could kind of connect with them, and I felt like I could kind of trust them. But because their story was so much like mine, right? Their story was so much like mine. And but I knew that I had to watch them because I was in the restitution center, and this is a facilitator of a meeting. Like, how am I going to open up to this person? They seem really genuine, right? Peer, like they say they're a peer, but so I used to listen. There was an overhead speaker, and I used to listen to people share. I used to listen to people share at the meeting, and they would share some really dark and twisted stuff that they could probably get like rearrested for, right? Sent back over to the jail. And I would lay in my bunk and I would listen for their name to get called down. Because if your name got called down, that meant you're getting rearrested, right? Especially if it was like 10 o'clock at night, like you knew the cops were in the lobby, they're coming to get you. So I'd listen on, Saturday nights, and I would never hear those people's names get called up. So then I knew that lady that was running the meeting wasn't ratting people out, right? I was like, okay, all right, okay. So that anonymity piece for me, that confidentiality and anonymity piece was what was really the most attractive to me. So I started to trust her little bit by little bit. We met for a few minutes, very short few minutes after the meeting, because that was like right before the smoke break. And man, you want to go out and get your last smoke break. So, so we would meet, and she started to, I was allowed to finally go to outside meetings. And I went to the outside meeting that she was facilitating on Wednesday night at the Hawthorne. And before I was released, she tricked me. She talked me into co-facilitating the meeting with her, and it was a complete blessing, and here's why. My Wednesday meeting with my kids behind the DHS office was across the parking lot from the meeting. So I could literally, all I had to do was get from the DHS office to the meeting without relapsing. That's all I had to do. I just had to walk across the parking lot. Some people might think that that's an easy thing to do, but when you just seen your kids with somebody watching you behind glass, and then they're taken away from you and you watch them drive away again, it's a really long walk across that parking lot sometimes. And I was just really grateful that DDA was right there. And I would walk in that room and I'd be a hot mess, an absolute hot mess. But we would get through the next hour. And if I could just get through that next hour and have a place to tell my truth and not be judged, and have a place to catch my breath, and a ride home. She used to drive me home. The kids came back about 4 months later. We've been home for 4 years. I work on my mental health every single day, and I couldn't have done it without the fellowship of this program and my peers. And I couldn't have done it, honestly, without the people that I get to work with now. I'm the Washington County coordinator with DDA, and I have the blessing of taking support groups into 7 transitional housings. I do 1 meeting in the community, and we're looking at adding another meeting in the community, which is amazing because I love doing in-person meetings. So, and I honestly tell you, I get more from them than they are ever going to get from me. Like, that's what keeps me clean and sober today and mentally sane. Thank you.
All right, well, that's wrap up this time. And I appreciate you guys all valuing this presentation and coming today, and I hope you got something out of it. Yes, you have your hand up. Yes, you may. 2 minutes. Because we do have 2 minutes. We did have a panel, and Martha was going to be on the panel.
So I just want to quickly share a couple of things. First of all, we had talked earlier about anonymity and confidentiality and those kind of things. And one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to be transparent. I'm the person who first brought Therese into a meeting. Okay. But what I want to say most importantly is that I'm a native Oregonian. I came from Coos County, Oregon, Coos Bay, very depressed area. I landed in Washington County, Oregon, and I was there for about 10 years before I learned about DDA. It was at the death of my dad. I was clean and sober, holding on by white knuckles, didn't know what I was doing about recovery, just thought it was all about don't use. But the phrase that I'm most well known for today that I discovered through DDA was, I put down the drugs and alcohol and the crazy didn't go away, right? My interpersonal issues, my employment issues, everything was still upside down, right? And then I stepped into a role in running the Reentry Council for Washington County. And in that, I became familiar with Corbett, Monica, and DDA. And we walked in the Oregon Gardens together at the very first Peerpocalypse. And he stood in a place that I didn't have a father anymore, right? He was that spirit that I could start to ask questions about medication, about being what I call having a uniquely made brain, right? I didn't even call it mental illness, and most of the time I don't. It's a uniquely made brain. And he walked with me and he allowed me to be a child next to him, right? And after that, I brought a chapter from the Reentry Council. We started a chapter inside the Washington County Correction Center. Beyond that, we took one outside, so people that started to discover the experience of DDA inside of a setting of incarceration, we're like, man, we got to know where this is going, right? So we started another one outside in the community. Then we started one at the Hawthorne Walk-In Center, which Therese referenced, and it just started to grow, but nothing made it grow like COVID. The silver lining to the virus that has hit this whole country, right? It opened it up so that I have Zoom meetings, people that are coming from the UK and other countries, other states, and they're discovering that they are not alone. And we often have a uniquely made brain. And how is it that we can start that journey to understand the uniquely made brain after we climb out of a bag or a bottle? So we didn't get there by being stable, well, happy, and content. But those are the things that are achievable through a fellowship like DDA. Thanks for letting me share. And what I say in most of my meetings is, my name is Martha, I'm dually diagnosed. Thanks for being part of my recovery.
You can't put money on this, and it's not selling it, it's just explaining it. So thank you guys for being here. Wait. First the computer, now the password?